guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to share with you a review on the new Colourpop No Filter Stick Foundation. I'm also going to be comparing it to the original liquid No Filter foundation. I have one on each side of my face. So if you guys want to know my thoughts about this foundation, how it compares to the original foundation, and a wear test on how each of them wear compared to each other, then just keep on watching. Colourpop No Filter Stick Foundation. It just comes in white packaging and it just looks like a normal stick foundation. It comes in 30 shades and I actually ended up buying two. I ended up wearing the shade Light 70 Warm, and then I also bought 81 Neutral, and I actually thought it was going to be this shade. I thought this shade would be way too light and I ended up being Light 70. They do have 30 shades, a bunch of different undertones, and then these are $10 each. And then in here you do get 0.34 of an ounce. That's usually about the same amount of product you're getting in other stick foundations. I have, for reference, the Anastasia stick foundation. You get 0.32 ounces in here and then 0.25, so even less in the Hourglass foundation. So you actually get a little bit more than some other popular stick foundations. Then the claims on this are that it's a medium buildable coverage and also a skin-like finish. So that is pretty much the breakdown of the stick foundation, comparing it to the liquid foundation. And I will leave my review, wear test, and demo on this in my description box. But their No Filter liquid foundation retails for $12. It comes in 42 shades. I'm in the shade medium 80, so just a shade reference. If you are medium 80, I'm wearing the shade light 70 in the stick foundation. It's like slightly lighter than this shade, but it's very similar. And then the claims on this are that it's a buildable full coverage and then a natural matte finish. So this one claims to be a bit more matte compared to the stick foundation, but those are basically the differences between both. And then you get 0.85 of an ounce in here, so it's pretty comparable to most liquid foundations. You get about that same amount of product, or 1 ounce usually. So right now I'm wearing each foundation on each half of my face, so I'm going to go into the demo so you can see how each foundation applies, how it sets on my face, how it covers up texture, redness, anything like that. So let's go ahead into the demo. Alright, so I have the No Filter stick and the No Filter foundation. I'm going to do one half of my face with each foundation. And then for primer, I'm wearing the Smashbox Primerizer Primer. This is a really good general primer that I like to use with pretty much every single foundation. It's hydrating and it gives you like a nice base for your foundation, but it doesn't necessarily smooth out fine line or blur pores, anything like that. That's really gonna change up the look of the foundation. So, and then I have two clean beauty blenders so I don't get product on each side. And I also have two pimples, one on each side of my face, which kind of sucks, but is good for research purposes, for science, for this video, so we can see how much coverage each foundation gives. So I'm going to start off with the stick foundation side, just so you guys can see what it looks like compared to no foundation, so you can see the coverage. So this is what it looks like, a regular stick foundation. And I've actually been applying, it looks like a crazy color until I blend it out, but I've actually been applying a decent amount. But I always go in with a different amount depending on the stick foundation. With the Hourglass foundation, I end up using like half of this, but I do find that this is more of like a medium coverage. And look how the coverage kind of disappears from where my pimple is. It just makes a hole around it, which is the opposite of what I want it to do. But I will actually apply a little bit more right there. So it's just so weird that the foundation just disappears where I have a breakout. But you guys will see. Let me just go ahead and apply a little bit more just to that area. And you'll see I get more coverage. And I do apply it a little bit more generously there. But that kind of just shows me that if you do have more texture on your skin, you're gonna wanna go a little bit heavier with the foundation. And I think that's a pretty good match. For reference, I'm a little bit darker than MAC NC25. That's the shade I have in MAC, but then I have to wear a lot of bronzer, so I'm probably one shade up from that. But that is the coverage. It's a medium buildable coverage, I would say. It's definitely not full coverage, and you guys saw that I did go in with a decent amount of foundation. I applied it all over my face, whereas with some other stick foundations, I could just do like 4 little dots and it'll cover my whole face. So you can be pretty generous with this foundation and it's not gonna get cakey or heavy. So I'm just gonna go in with the liquid foundation. It's been a little while since I've used this. I'm gonna just use like a pump and a half to start out. And I will go ahead and leave my review and wear test of the liquid foundation below if you guys want a dedicated video on that. You guys can see so far with just like the pump and a half of the liquid side that I applied, does a decent job of covering out the breakout on this side. I'm just gonna go in with like the tiniest little bit just over that area, probably just like right in the center of my face like I did on the other side. All right, so here is the look. This is each side of my face. I think that the coverage is pretty much the same, like a medium buildable coverage. The stick side looks way more matte. It looks like I set it with powder already compared to this side. This looks way dewier, but that's what you would expect with a solid versus liquid foundation. But even when I set it, I think it's gonna look that way too. Like this side will look more matte because on its own, that's what I found with this foundation compared to the liquid foundation. But I think coverage wise, pretty much the same. The coloring's slightly different. It looks like this shade's 1 shade darker, which it is, but we'll try to fix that up with some bronzer. But overall, the coverage is pretty similar. I am going to go ahead and zoom you guys in, see if there's like any weird areas where the foundation is starting to settle in, and just so you guys can get a closer look. So I definitely think coverage wise, everything looks pretty similar. The liquid side definitely looks more dewy compared to the stick foundation, but definitely overall I think the coverage, the look of my skin, like texture wise, is pretty similar on both sides. The liquid's just a little bit dewier than the stick foundation. So I'm just gonna go ahead and conceal and set my face real quick. I'm using the no filter concealer. I'm just gonna use all Colourpop, at least my setting powder, my concealer. This is medium 22, the shade I wear in the concealer. This is probably my favorite face product from Colourpop, and this shade's really nice. It's a little bit more neutrally, and as much as I really want to put concealer on each breakout and down the center of my face, I'm not going to. I'm just gonna leave it there. That way we can see the full test of the coverage, which makes me a little annoyed because I know that my makeup will look better if I put concealer on my nose, but I will resist that urge right now. And then I'm gonna use the no filter setting powder to set under my eyes and also my whole face. I really, really like this powder, especially for an affordable powder. This is probably my favorite. And now it's been like maybe 8 minutes since I first applied the foundation, and maybe you guys can see it's starting to settle into fine lines in my forehead, equally on both sides, which I would find with any foundation that I haven't set yet. So it's not like crazy on one side versus the other. And this powder does give you like a matte finish, but it's still skin-like. It's not overly matte or drying or anything. All right, so my face is all set. I'm going to finish up the rest of my makeup, and then I will check in with you guys to see how each side of my face wore, probably in like 8 or 9 hours from now. All right, you guys, so it is 9:15 p.m. It is about 8.5 hours after I first applied both sides of the foundation, and I feel like it looks pretty similar on both sides. I do think that the stick foundation side looks a little bit more full coverage and a little bit more matte compared to the liquid side, which is definitely not surprising because I've always found that this gets dewier as the day progresses. Like your natural oils like seep through a little bit. That sounds so gross, but it just becomes a little bit more skin-like and it fades very naturally, but just like subtly. It's still pretty decent coverage, but this looks a bit more freshly applied and a little bit, yeah, more full coverage, a little bit more matte. I didn't touch up my face at all, and you guys can see like it is settling into my smile lines in both sides, so both foundations pretty much settle the same. The liquid foundation side, this side, is a little bit more dewy, and right before I turned on the camera, I just touched my forehead and it just feels like dewy. Like there's like a little bit of a fingerprint. I don't know if you guys can tell, like right here where I touched my forehead before. Yeah, like it's breaking up. If I just like touch it gently, like it all starts to come off. Okay, you guys can probably see that a little bit. Let me like not look like that the rest of the video. But it does break down a bit more on the liquid side. This side just feels like definitely way more matte, like a bit more freshly applied, like matte to the touch compared to the liquid side. Definitely this is more transfer proof compared to the liquid foundation. I like to wear the liquid foundation if I'm filming, or just like if I want like a light makeup look. But in terms of makeup looks like this, if I want my makeup to last for like 12 hours or so, like this is not my go-to foundation because it does get dewier and it does break down. You do need to touch it up a bit more, but I do like the coverage. I like the finish and it feels nice on my skin, but it's not like the most long wearing foundation. And also I have been wearing this foundation on its own for a few days now, so I do have my full thoughts about it on my full face, and it wears really nicely. And I also dance a lot of weeknights, and the past couple nights I have danced for like several hours, like super intense, like my whole body is drenched. But my foundation stays in place. It does wear slightly, but I'm literally like rolling on the floor and like leaping to the ground for hours. So very few foundations will stay in place in that scenario. I didn't feel like it was really breaking down as I was like sweating or anything the last couple nights that I had this on while I was dancing. So that definitely put it to the test and helped me see that this does stay really matte throughout the day, and as you wear it, it stays pretty in place and it doesn't turn like oily or greasy or anything. All right, so I just zoomed you guys out so I wasn't like so in your face, but overall, pretty much what I expected happened with each foundation, just what I find with them on their own, and just re-emphasize that this is a really nice long wearing, more mattifying foundation compared to the liquid version. This definitely gives you a little bit more of a full coverage look. It stays matte longer. It looks pretty matte on my skin. This looks like so dewy right here compared to here. This looks very like freshly powdered, and this looks like I just sprayed on like my Morphe setting spray. It looks pretty dewy, but not in a bad or like my makeup looks awful way. It just looks like I've been wearing my makeup for a long time. So I do really like the foundation stick. If you found that this was too dewy or it didn't last very long, this has very similar coverage, but it's gonna last a bit longer and be more mattifying. The one downside with this, I don't know how it's gonna do if you have a lot of texture on your skin, because with my one pimple, I just had to like go over it a couple times. And also just an FYI, I was breaking out for like the past week before I even got this foundation, so I'm not breaking out because of it. But yeah, it didn't do a great job of covering it up with one layer. I did have to reapply it a few times. And like my Hourglass foundation, that's really full coverage. The stick foundation, this one, is way more full coverage compared to this. So if you're used to like a stick foundation like this, you're probably gonna need to use probably double the amount with this. You guys saw how I applied pretty much my whole face with this foundation. It is definitely buildable to full coverage, and when you do build it up, it doesn't get like cakey and it doesn't look like really thick on your skin. So I really do like that. It is a bit more mattifying, but it still feels really comfortable. It doesn't feel like drying or matte either. So definitely a fan of this. I will leave my review of the liquid version down below. Definitely a bit dewier. I do like this foundation, but this one is gonna be your go-to if you want something that's gonna last longer compared to this one, but you want something around the similar price point. Okay, so those are all of my thoughts on the new Colourpop Stick Foundation. Let me know if you picked it up in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you've tried out the liquid foundation, if you had similar results as I have, that it gets dewier, that it doesn't last a super long time, but it's still a pretty nice foundation. And if that's the case, you're probably gonna wanna check out the stick foundation if you want something around a similar price point that gives you similar coverage. So that's gonna be everything for today's video. If you guys liked it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.